To add to that, you've destroyed our private pension system. You took away from the Bank of England its ability to regulate the banks and gave it to the tick-box bureaucrats at the FSA in Canary Wharf. And we haven't heard an apology. Your government has apologised for the Amritsar massacre. You've apologised for slavery. You've apologised for virtually everything. Will you please apologise for what you did as British Chancellor, and then perhaps we might just listen to you. Thank you.
Für die Fraktions...
Find out more about it.
Well, that's Nigel Farage, member of the European Union Parliament from England, also the head of the UK Independence Party, one of the fastest growing parties in the UK. He just resigned from that position so he can run against someone in higher office. He'll explain to us all the intricacies of that. But we're very, very excited to have Mr. Farage on with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed.
The website is UKIP.org, or UK Independence Party. For Americans that don't know who you are, a lot of folks know who Lord Monckton is and others, and you have a lot of fans here as well for standing up against EU corruption and tyranny. In a nutshell, tell us about yourself, about the UK Independence Party, and why you've resigned as the head of your party to intensify the fight.
I was in business. I left school, I went straight into the City of London, and I was going about a fairly normal life. You know, I played four-handicap golf, I went to the local pub on Sunday lunchtimes, I had children growing up at school, I was running a business in the city, and to all intents and purposes, I wasn't involved in politics on a day-to-day basis at all. But in the early 1990s, I saw a disastrous attempt by the British government, with no opposition at all, to peg the level of sterling against the Deutschmark. It was called the exchange rate mechanism, and I predicted that it would go badly wrong, and sure enough it did. And then I realized that this was part of a bigger project, a project that the British political elite were engaged in, along with the elites from the other European countries, and that was to take something that we'd been told was a common market, a European economic community, but actually, surreptitiously, and without ever telling the truth or giving anyone a say, to turn that into a political union. The day I realized that whether it was Labour or Conservative, it made no difference, because their high commands were all sold by this idea of a new supranational form of European government, I thought, I can't live with this anymore. I thought, I've got to get involved in politics, and so I did. And so about 12 of us sat in a room in the early mid-1990s, and we formed the UK Independence Party. And our battle is, you know, we want to be friends with our European neighbours. We want to trade with them. We want to cooperate with them. We're quite happy for people from Paris to work in London and vice versa. What we don't want is for the situation we have whereby 75% of our laws that are made every year are made in foreign institutions. And so through the 90s, this became kind of a crusade for me, I guess. And in the end, I was elected to the European Parliament in 1999. We were still then a very small party. But the things that we've been saying are now really hitting home with the British public. And in the European elections this year in June, UKIP, UK Independence Party, came second across the entire United Kingdom. So that's, you know, a fantastic rate of progress. We've got the British public with us. We're educating them. They're coming on side with our point of view. Difficulty is, I find myself now leading the opposition group in the European Parliament. I've got 33 MEPs from several different countries who've got the same opinion. So I am the voice of opposition inside this European Parliament. But I was also having to run UKIP in the United Kingdom as well. And given that we've got a general election coming up in about 6 months' time, the prospect of running a group here and of leading a campaign with 550 candidates for the national parliament, you know, the party's outgrown one man doing it. So I've stood down as leader of the National Party. I'm staying on for the moment as leader of the group in the Parliament, and I'm breaking with what's supposed to be a convention, and that is that the Speaker of the House of Commons, and any of you that watch Prime Minister's Question Time, you know, the great Punch and Judy show that we have in Westminster once a week, will see there's a guy in the chair who's the Speaker. Well, the new guy we've got, I consider wholly unsuitable, and in previous times, he was always re-elected unopposed. But I'm now taking him on and I'm fighting him for his Westminster seat in the next general election.
So you are boldly taking action, and you've been very successful in business previously, did great in college, had a successful business career. You were forced to go into this, extremely eloquent. You absolutely just have devastated Van Rompuy and Gordon Brown in the European Parliament. The papers in Europe really are singling you out as the leading force, energizing people from across Europe that know that the European Union has become dictatorial. If nations vote to get out of it, they just expand it. They've lied in England. For those that don't know, please enlighten our audience. Saying that the British people would get to vote on whether or not they went under EU control, but that's being done by stealth, just like the United States is being brought into the European Union sway through agreements and through the North American Union agreement of the SPP. We have the SPP documents where they talk about this being done by stealth. We have the Club of Rome documents. We have the EU documents. We have Van Rompuy now saying it's a global government. I mean, this really is a group of would-be dictators. And so your fight on the continent against this is so important when we have UK polls of over 80% don't want to be part of the EU, but still England is being sucked by this octopus in. Break this down for us, European Union Member of Parliament, Nigel Farage.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening in the European Union is not happening in isolation. We have a political class across the world that are basically aiming for a form of global governance. You know, if you don't believe me, look at what's happening as we speak in Copenhagen. I mean, what's happening there is governments are sitting around a table trying to sign us up to treaties on a very, very questionable concept of global warming caused by CO2 emissions. But if they get these deals, in theory, you know, we're bound for the next 20 or 30 years, and it doesn't matter who we vote for. And my take on this is that the real battle that is going on in the Western world right now, it's a battle of democracy versus bureaucracy. And the bureaucrats and our arrogant politicians at the moment have got the upper hand. But where we're starting to win with public opinion. And in the end, you know, they can push these things as far as they like, but in the end, public opinion will tear all of this down. And frankly, as far as I'm concerned, the sooner the better. And I'm doing this, and I'm saying these things, and yes, I'm being singled out by the European media, because there's virtually nobody else in elected politics from Britain that has actually got the courage to stand up and say it. And, you know, people sidle up to me in lifts and in restaurants, you know, fellow MEPs and MPs, and say, oh, well, Nigel, you know, we're very pleased that you've got the courage to stand up and say these things because we agree with you. Well, they might agree with us, but they're not saying it. So I'm going to go on fighting these people, and I believe that I'm going to go on winning the battle for public opinion, not just in Britain, but right across Europe too. And I hope act as a bit of a warning to you guys in the States as well, that this same phenomenon may well be starting to engulf you.
Oh, it absolutely is. 2 years ago, Judicial Watch, a public interest law firm, sued and got all this because they wouldn't release it through FOIA, but they finally did. And Bush in 2005 signed a treaty saying we're already part of an American Union with this private corporate board running things, but our national media will not talk about it. It's kind of like in 2007, the European Union celebrated 50 years. But I thought it wasn't founded till 2000. So you have this European Union by stealth through an economic agreement, and then now they admit it's a union, and the same thing's happening here. But you spoke about a huge awakening taking place. You spoke about the fact that if we just point out what illegitimate tyrants these people are, that they will fall. And you talk about people thanking you as if you can go out and do it alone. We have the moral high ground. We have the law on our side. We have history on our side. The problem is the bureaucracy has all the big banks and the big money that want to set up their own private global corporate government behind them. So speak specifically to the state of the world from your in-depth position as a key member of the European Union Parliament from England, and tie that into Copenhagen and the open announcements by Al Gore, Gordon Brown, Herman Van Rompuy, and all of them openly saying this is world government through this environmentalist tyranny.
Yeah, I mean, what they do, of course, and it's a well-established technique, they try and use any crisis. Now, whether it's a real crisis or whether it's a crisis of their invention, they use the crisis to extend the argument for a loss of democracy, a loss of freedom of the individual, and the increase in global governance. And I can think of two very good examples of this. The first, of course, is the so-called war on terror. That, we face a threat from Al-Qaeda or whoever else it may be, and because of this, we have to give the state more power over our lives, and a lot of the judicial safeguards that we've enjoyed in Britain are now being thrown out of the window in the name of the war on terror.